يرويه عن ربه عز وجل أنه قال: يا عبادي إن حرمت الظلم على نفسي وجعلته بينكم محرما فلا تظالموا. يا عبادي كلكم ضال إلا من هديته فاستهدوني أهدكم. يا عبادي كلكم جائع إلا من أطعمته فاستطعموني أطعمكم. يا عبادي كلكم عار إلا من كسوته فاستكسوني أكسكم. يا عبادي إنكم تخطئون بالليل والنهار وأنا أغفر الذنوب جميعا فاستغفروني أغفر لكم. يا عبادي إنكم لن تبلغوا ضري فتضروني ولن تبلغوا نفعي فتنفعوني. يا عبادي لو أن أولكم وآخركم وإنسكم وجنكم كان على أتقى قلب رجل واحد منكم ما زاد ذلك في ملكي شيئا. يا عبادي لو أن أولكم وآخركم وإنسكم وجنكم كان على أفجر قلب رجل واحد منكم ما نقص ذلك من ملكي شيئا. يا عبادي لو أن أولكم وآخركم وإنسكم وجنكم قاموا في صعيد واحد فسألوني فأعطيت كل واحد مسألته ما نقص ذلك من ما عندي إلا كما ينقص المخيط إذا أدخل البحر. يا عبادي إنما هي أعمالكم أحصيها لكم ثم أوفيكم إياها فمن وجد خيرا فليحمد الله ومن وجد غير ذلك فلا يلومن إلا نفسه. رواه Muslim. Very long narration. We'll read the translation inshallah and get into it. So this was narrated by Abu Dharr al-Ghifari, may Allah be pleased with him, and he said that the Prophet ﷺ said, relating from his Lord, from Allah, so this is a hadith from Allah: O my servants, I made oppression unlawful for me and unlawful for you, so do not commit oppression against one another. O my servants, all of you are liable to err, except for those who I guide to the right path. Therefore seek guidance from me so that I should direct you to the right path. O my servants, all of you are hungry and needy, except for those whom I feed. Therefore seek food from me so that I may feed you. O my servants, all of you are naked, except for those whom I provide garments. Therefore seek clothing from me so that I should clothe you. O my servants, you sin by night and by day, and I am there to pardon your sins. Therefore seek forgiveness from me so that I should grant you pardon. O my servants, you can neither do me any harm, nor can you do me any good. O my servants, even if you are the first of you and the last amongst you, and the whole human race of yours and that of the jinns became as pious as the most pious heart of any one amongst you, it would not add anything to my power or my kingdom. O my servants, even if the first amongst you and the last amongst you, the whole human race of yours and that of the jinns, became as wicked as the most wicked heart of anyone amongst you, it would not decrease anything from my power or my kingdom. O my servants, even if the first of you and the last amongst you, and the whole human race of yours and the jinn, gather together on one piece of land, and all of you ask me, and if I were to give every single one of them what they asked, that would not decrease anything in any way from what I have, any more than a needle would decrease what is in the ocean when it is put into it. O my servants, these deeds of yours, which I am recording for you, I shall reward you for them. So he who finds good shall praise Allah, and he who finds other than that should not blame anyone but himself. This was narrated by Imam Muslim. So very, 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 very powerful hadith. And it's a unique hadith. We haven't come across a hadith like this before. It is a hadith Qudsi. We'll get into it in a little bit. So the narrator is Abu Dharr al-Ghifari, who we've been over in the past, so we're not going to go over him today. But just as a summary, he was a very early Muslim. He came from the Bani Ghifar tribe that used to be highway robbers. He heard about the Prophet ﷺ, and he went to the Prophet ﷺ in Mecca, and the Prophet ﷺ told him, preached him Islam. He converted. He ended up doing da'wah to his whole clan. They all became Muslim, and years later they came back and traveled to Medina to meet the Prophet ﷺ. And the whole tribe had become Muslim from him. And he ended up living a very disciplined lifestyle that a lot of people and a lot of Sahaba looked up to. So he's a very great Sahabi, Abu Dharr al-Ghifari. And this hadith is actually, as you must have noticed, was the second longest hadith in the entire collection. The first one is probably Hadith Jibreel. This one's the second longest in the collection, so it took a little while to get through it. But it's a very important hadith, as all of them are. There's a scholar named Allama Sindi who said that if there was one hadith he was to recommend for anyone to memorize, it would be this one hadith. And so to start on maybe a little more technical discussion of the hadith, before we get into the meanings of it. So this is a hadith that is known as a hadith Qudsi. And so the translation of that would be a divine narration. In the hadith literature, in the hadith science, there's different ways to categorize hadiths. One way to categorize the hadiths is by its origin, about basically like who the hadith is attributed to. So if the origin, the saying is attributed to Allah directly, without anyone in between, then that means it is hadith Qudsi, which is this narration. If it's to the Prophet ﷺ, it would be considered what's called a marfu' or a lifted hadith, because it's lifted directly to the Prophet ﷺ. If it's narrated on the Sahaba, but the Sahaba doesn't mention on the Prophet ﷺ, and so it's a saying that it's attributed just to the Sahaba, it becomes a mawquf, or like a stopped hadith. And if it's by the tabi'i, the generation after the Sahaba, or anyone after that, it's known as maqtu' or cut narration. So those are just different ways to kind of categorize hadith, and this one's a Qudsi. Other names for it is also hadith ilahi or hadith rabbani. And so the way that these hadith work essentially is that the Prophet ﷺ had different ways of receiving revelation, and these hadith would be often inspired to him directly or through dreams. And so the meanings are directly from Allah, but the words could come from the Prophet ﷺ's own wordings of those meanings. And so it's very important to for us to distinguish this from, say for example, the Quran, right? Because the Quran comes directly from Allah. And so a lot of times people have confusion of what's the distinction between Hadith Qudsi and Quran, for example. And so some important differences come up. For example, the Quran are the words of Allah in both the form, like the language that's used, as well as the meaning. Whereas Hadith Qudsi could be the wording of the Prophet ﷺ. The Quran is completely mutawatir, which means it's undisputably authentic, and there's massive narrations that are attributed back to the Prophet ﷺ from Allah. Whereas not all Hadith Qudsi are as strong and authentic. The Quran has a special reward for it. You can recite it in your Quran, in Salah, whereas you can't recite Hadith Qudsi in Salah. And there's a few other distinctions. The Quran is also miraculous in its wording, and no one can copy it or create something like it. Whereas Hadith is, while it's still Hadith from the Prophet ﷺ, it doesn't have that same miraculous quality. So those are just some distinctions between Hadith Qudsi and Quran, which is, I think, important to just have as a background. There's only a few Hadith Qudsi narrations in all the Hadith literature that are very authentic, and this is a very authentic and also very important narration that comes to us. So it starts by saying, Ya ibadi, and this is something that's repeated again and again every phrase. Ya ibadi means my slaves, my servants. And it's a very beautiful way of phrasing it. It's very intimate. One reflection that comes out of that is that sometimes people try to limit this hadith to saying just Muslims, because it's saying my slaves, my servants. But the word slave servants only sometimes is used in the Quran or hadith to refer to Muslims specifically. It generally can mean more than just Muslims. It's just people who believe in Allah or worship Allah or have a they're on their fitrah, they're on a natural goodness. And so it doesn't necessarily limit just to Muslims. So this hadith is speaking to mankind as a whole. And when the word ibadi is used here, it's saying that my slave, my servant. What's really cool, and this will come up a little bit later, is that even when the hadith mentions that you err, you make sins in the night and in the day, he still calls you my slave, my servant, ya ibadi. And so it's it doesn't matter about the status. It's not only people who are very pious or righteous or sinless. It's a general call to everyone. It's a very personal call to you as an individual, which is very, very beautiful. And even just the wording ya ibadi, it's very soft and gentle and calling out to you. And I think also when you use the word ibad and we translate it as slave in English, there's a lot of baggage that comes along with it. So when we say slave, the first thing that comes to mind is maybe American form of slavery, very abusive. And what happens in this hadith actually right away is that the first thing Allah says is, my slaves, that I have made oppression haram upon myself. So Allah is saying that He doesn't allow Himself, He's prohibited upon Himself any form of oppression or wrongdoing. And then He commands us to do the same. So it's that first thing is that, when people might think of slavery, they think of an oppressive system, and Allah right away is saying this is not a system of oppression, this is a very different kind of relationship. And at the same time, when He's commanding us to not commit oppression, He's not, a lot of times maybe, for example, a king might make a law that doesn't apply to him. Whereas in this case, He's saying do not commit oppression, and I have made oppression prohibited upon me, myself, Allah is saying that. Which is very beautiful. It's not something that was necessary, but that's something that Allah is doing out of His mercy. And by prohibiting oppression and wrongdoing, it necessarily makes the opposite true. So if He's prohibiting all kinds of oppression, that means He's opening the door completely to justice, mercy, and love. And that's the foundation of the relationship that we have with Allah, which is very, very beautiful, and a beautiful way to start off the hadith. And one thing that comes out of this is that Allah really only wishes the best for us, kind of like a parent and their child. And even if the hadith just kind of ended here, I think just like understanding that point alone kind of takes away a lot of the anxiety that we might have with our relationship with Allah, or just kind of like the stresses we have in this world, knowing that Allah wishes the best for us and He's not going to be oppressive at all. And so, let's see. Yeah, so that's like kind of like the first part. So what he says, the word that's used for oppression is dhulm. And so dhulm means kind of oppression. Literally, if you were to like translate the root of it, it would mean to put something in its unrightful place, to kind of misplace something. And another way to define it would be to step out of balance, or to make something out of balance. And that's kind of at the root of injustice. An example that Mufti Kamani mentioned, which was kind of helpful, was like, for example, like let's say you have a horse and you're riding the horse and you put stuff on it to carry. If you put the amount of 2 horses on 1 horse, that's putting something out of balance. That's putting something in its improper place. So that would count as dhulm, as oppression on that horse. As like one simple example. And so Allah is trying to remind us how important it is to avoid that kind of dhulm. So to talk about dhulm, it also necessitates kind of talking about like the opposite of that, which is kind of the rights that are due. So there's really 3 kinds of oppression that can happen, broadly speaking. There are oppressions like dhulm, imbalances that you can create with your relationship with Allah. There's dhulm that you can do to creation or to people around us, and dhulm that you can do to yourself. And so, examples of dhulm against like Allah would be like not fulfilling the rights of Allah, which would be like not praying, not fasting. Against creation would be stealing, harming someone, backbiting. These are all kinds of oppression towards fellow people. Same thing with like polluting, hurting the environment. Those would count as dhulm against creation. And against yourself would be also like not eating properly, not sleeping properly, also committing sins, because at the end of the day you're harming yourself and your own heart by committing those sins. And so that's also kind of all encompassed within that conversation. And another beautiful thing that comes out of this also is that we shouldn't really think of our worship to Allah as something that we have to do. It's not like you're worshiping Allah or you're praying because you have to. That kind of makes this like a very burdenful relationship. That's not really the point. The idea here is, again, to kind of come back to that understanding that Allah really wishes the best for us, and when we're doing these things, it's for our own interest. Like Allah in this hadith, He mentions in multiple times, in multiple different ways, just to get us to understand that none of this stuff that we're doing is increasing anything with Allah. It's not changing anything with Allah. If the best of us, like if we were all like, if every person, human or jinn, was like the Prophet ﷺ, it wouldn't change anything with Allah. Like it wouldn't add anything to Him. It would only benefit us. And if all of us was like shaitan, if every single person was a shaitan and every single jinn was a shaitan, it wouldn't change, it wouldn't harm Allah. It doesn't decrease Him, it doesn't disappoint, it's nothing. It's like no benefit or disbenefit to Allah. It's completely for our own sake and our own souls. And this hadith is really trying to emphasize that point. And also, when He's preventing us from becoming oppressors, there's a lot of different consequences that come from being an oppressor yourself. And so some of the consequences that have been noted is losing the guidance that Allah provides. It's kind of like a positive feedback loop. The more you oppress, the more you lose guidance. And if you don't have the guidance of Allah, that means you're going to be guided by the shaitan. And the more you're guided by shaitan, the more you're going to oppress. So it's like a positive feedback loop that slowly, step by step, takes people away from the religion. There's also like you lose peace and tranquility in your heart and in your life. Your soul darkens. There's like regrets that you build in this life and regrets that you're going to have in the hereafter. All these are kind of, and you lose the love of people around you. People start fearing you instead of loving you. These are all things that happen from oppression. And so Allah is warning us against oppression because He has ultimate power. He understands the consequences of power, and He's preventing us from committing oppression. And when we see oppression, when we're not committing it, but we see it, we all should take a stance against it, whether it's speaking out against it or acting against it. It's very important to not stay silent when you see oppression. And that's something that's also reinforced by a lot of other hadith. And there's a hadith that mentions, like for example, that you should help your sibling, whether they're the oppressor or the oppressed. And the Sahaba were kind of surprised. They're like, we understand how you'd help the oppressed, but how would you help the oppressor? And the Prophet ﷺ said, by stopping them from oppressing. And so those are kind of some examples around that. And lastly, also, the dua of the oppressed. Like if you are on the oppressed side, know that the dua of the oppressed, there is no veil between the dua of the oppressed and Allah. And either Allah will grant that in this life or in the hereafter for sure. But don't stand between. If you see someone who's oppressed, don't be on the receiving end of their dua, like in a negative way, because it's for sure going to be answered. And so again, coming back to this idea of like Allah reaching out, saying Ya ibadi again and again. He reaches out to us and asks us to seek forgiveness from Him, right? And He reminds us of our complete dependence on Him. So He asks us to seek His guidance. So there's really two kinds of guidance that scholars have mentioned. There's one that they call Hidayah Mujmal, and one is Hidayah Mufsal. Mujmal means general, kind of the Hidayah that Allah has provided for everyone. So everyone has been granted a fitrah, like a natural state of goodness that they're born into. Allah has provided opportunities in everyone's life to be guided to some truth that they're going to be responsible for. And so that's kind of a general guidance. And then that's given to everyone. And then there's a more specific forms of guidance that we seek Allah's help for example, like the details in Islam, understanding the rules of the religion, or understanding the relationship we have with Allah, like what we should believe. These are all parts of guidance that we seek from Allah. And Hidayah itself, means to be guided with love and kindness. Like the word Hidayah connotes kind of like this with kindness. It's not just like a simple guide, but guided with love or kindness, which is also very beautiful. And the Prophet ﷺ himself would always make dua for Hidayah. So we always think of Hidayah as guidance, as just being guided to Islam. It's like black and white, on and off. It's like you're Muslim or you're not, or you're doing good or not. But Hidayah is more than that. It's not just reaching, I'm Muslim, so I'm guided. There's levels to it. So it's like always renewing that kind of asking for Hidayah. And again here Allah then mentions that, oh my servants, like all of you are hungry except whom I feed. And here like Allah is reminding us that He provides us rizq, He provides us sustenance, He provides us all our belongings, our goods, our wealth, even the most basic thing, which is food. There's another hadith Qudsi which Allah will say in the hereafter. He'll ask people, He says, I was hungry, why didn't you feed me? And people will say, how was I supposed to feed you? You're Allah. And He'll say that you saw someone who was hungry and you didn't feed them. And so that kind of reminds us again that there's this very beautiful concept that Allah provides rizq to everyone, but sometimes you have the opportunity to be the means through which other people receive rizq. And basically what that is like Allah's giving you more than you need, and He's saying, like, what are you going to do with it? And you have the opportunity there to gain a lot of good deeds, a lot of barakah, a lot of blessings from God by giving it to someone else. Like, you're not going to eat like 3 platefuls of food. So if you have extra food, if you have extra means to get food, share it with other people. And that way you become the means through which they receive Allah's rizq. And that's a very beautiful point, I think. And so some ways to improve rizq that were touched upon is like, seeking istighfar, seeking forgiveness from God can help improve rizq. Being grateful for what you have. Not earning your rizq in a haram way. So if you do something haram, sometimes someone will be like, I was trying to be honest in business, but because I was honest, I lost a lot of money. Like I could have gained a lot of money by being dishonest or selling alcohol or doing riba. But at the end of the day, the cheaters are never going to win. Whether it's in this life, they're going to lose money, like holistically, or in the hereafter, they're going to lose a lot. So it never, pays off to cheat. So always try to earn your rizq through halal means. And being very mindful of relationships. All these things are mentioned in hadith in the Quran to help improve our rizq. And on the flip side, things that reduce the rizq that Allah gives us are things like zina, fornication or adultery, not giving zakat, engaging in interest, or in oppression. So these are all things that can decrease our rizq. And then again, Allah mentions next the clothing. And one scholar mentioned like a very beautiful reflection that the two things that Allah mentions here is food and clothing, which is something that most people take for granted. Like these are things that are needed for survival. So anybody who's surviving has some sort of food or clothing. And so it's something that is very ubiquitous, and we kind of take it for granted. Like we just assume like we're going to have clothes and food, and what we ask for is like, oh, I want a really nice car or a nice house. So we always think of like these like luxuries, but we kind of take the essentials for granted. And Allah's reminding us that He's providing the essentials. So imagine who's also providing all the luxuries and all the things that are beyond the essentials. And He's reminding us that He can also take that away at any moment. So it kind of makes us remind ourselves of our vulnerability. That even if we're going to work and we think that we're working to earn our food, it's not that. Like Allah's providing for you directly. And we're just seeking the means for that. And then he reminds us that we make mistakes day and night, and this is a very important point, and then we'll try to end after this, inshallah. He reminds us that we make mistakes day and night. We're always sinning, we're always in a constant state of sin. And he's there to forgive us. And what's very beautiful is that we're reminded that even the Prophet ﷺ himself, who was the best of creation, who was forgiven for all his past, future, or present sins, and who never sinned to begin with, still made, in some narrations say over 70 istighfars a day, in other narrations over 100 istighfar a day. Like the minimum istighfar he'd make would be like 100 a day. And that's someone who is sinless and was already forgiven and is the best of creation. So what does that say for us? Like how much we should try to seek istighfar from our Lord, forgiveness from our Lord. And tawbah itself, the process, just to kind of like give an overview for the process, it's very simple. In Islam, it's very simple. You don't have to confess to anybody. You don't have to sacrifice anything. It's just, you basically, tawbah itself means to leave a sin for its distastefulness. And what's interesting is that sometimes when we see someone else engaging in a sin, it looks kind of gross that they're doing it, but shaitan makes it look very desirable for us. Like for example, if you see someone lying, you're like, oh, like they're lying, like, well, just, they're a liar, it's not a good quality. But, shaitan will come to you like, oh, it's a white lie, it's a small thing, like it'll help improve their like confidence, whatever it is, like, shaitan will make it look nice to you. And so the idea is to try to get around that. And so when you do make a sin, and like we're all going to make mistakes, the idea is to stop the sin, ask Allah for forgiveness, and then try to do whatever we can to like make an intention and follow up on the intention with actions to not do it again. And that kind of brings up this point where a lot of people who say like, I'm struggling with an addiction, how do I seek forgiveness if I'm addicted? And there's a very beautiful hadith that the Shaykh brought, and there was a man who came to the Prophet ﷺ. He said, what do I do what happens if a man sins? And the Prophet ﷺ said that Allah will write it against the man. And he said, what if he then seeks forgiveness? And he says, Allah will forgive him and erase it for him. And then he said, what if he sins again? He said that Allah will write the sin against him. He said, what if he seeks forgiveness? He said, Allah will forgive him. And that cycle repeated multiple times until the Prophet ﷺ eventually added, and Allah will not tire of granting forgiveness so long as the man keeps seeking forgiveness. So basically, like, it doesn't matter how many times you fall back into it, it doesn't matter, as long as every time you fall, you get back up and you don't lose hope in Allah, there's always going to be room for forgiveness. And that's kind of what this hadith is trying to get at. And the thing that the shaitan's trying to do the most is to try to give up hope in Allah. So inshallah, like, Allah can protect us from that. Basically, the rest of the hadith, the point of it is in very beautiful metaphors Allah is like providing, and I encourage everyone to try to read this hadith again. Allah is just reinstating how we are totally dependent on Him, and like that, He's so much beyond, like nothing that we ask from Him will decrease anything from Him, that no matter how good we are, it's not going to benefit Him. So it's just reminding us how basically we're dependent on Him. And so Jazakallah khair for your time. Thank you guys for your patience. And I ask all the CDs here to just